Hello, my name is Tak Pham, Assistant Curator at the MacKenzie Art Gallery, and the curator for this exhibition, Human Capital. With this exhibition, we will unpack the history and legacy of Canada's immigration system and how it treats people as capital. The artwork in the show will provide perspectives on how this very system has displaced, capitalized, and erased people, many are members of marginalized communities here in Canada, in its construction of a Canadian identity. Alisa Cohen, All Right. All Right is a video that pulls together footage from horror movies, news broadcasts, and training videos for immigration officers. Through the video, the artist presents how popular and systematic narratives have rendered the mainstream perception of immigration equivalent to the fear of strangers. In one particular scene taken from an immigration officer training video, we see an officer gets progressively aggressive and skeptical towards an immigrant hopeful. We can hear him saying to her, "Whether or not you meet our criteria, at least I'm not convinced, and I have to be convinced." Esma Mohamud, Deeper the Wounded, Deeper the Roots. With this series, we seek to recognize the lasting anti-Blackness legacy that persists in Canada despite what we tell ourselves otherwise. Here, artist Esma Mohamud uses the language of metaphor to capture the experience of Black bodies and to call out the continuing exploitation of Black body labor that has persisted until today. In these photos, Mohamud puts two men in a field to draw a comparison on how Black bodies continue to be used for industrial profits. The men in Mohamud's custom-made jersey have their backs to the viewers as an act of self-determination, rejecting the Western exploitative gaze. Shantae Gibson, Bookmark. Bookmark is a commemorative sculpture by artist and writer Shantae Gibson. It is to mark two key historical moments in 1783, the writing of the Book of Negroes, the largest single historical document about Black people in North America up until the end of the 18th century, and the arrival of the Black Loyalists in Nova Scotia, the largest single migration of Blacks to Canada, binding together 3,000 hand-crafted bookmarks, each representing a Black Loyalist recorded in the Book of Negroes. The sculpture is a weighted reminder of the role of Black Canadians in the history of Canada and how their stories is often left out of the mainstream narrative of the country. Shelly Yang, Means of Exchange. In these three photos, we see an assortment of seasonal objects that are widely available in discount store and tourist shops. Many of these items come from Yiwu, a manufacturing city that is located about 250 kilometers from Shanghai, China. The city is a major supplier to dollar store globally. Despite producing more than 1.8 million consumer products, many of these workers will never see their products on the Western retail shelves, and the cost of the labor is just a fraction of the prices that we pay for these objects here in Canada. Brian Jenkins, Untitled. This unique series of drawings show Brian Jenkins' return to his earlier drawing practice, similar to his well-known and internationally acclaimed sculptural work. These drawings show Jenkins exploring his own identity as a queer Indigenous artist within globalized consumerism through imagery he sees in mass media and popular culture. The overlapping figures that we see in this series are selfies from social media apps for gay men. Social media, and especially these apps, are replicas of a society that trades in attention and desire. While these new technology can be said to have fostered new connections, it has also been used as a place for aggression and exploitation, especially towards members of marginalized communities, whose bodies do not receive the same protection as ideal Canadians do. Brian Jenkins and Joanne Linklater, Modest Livelihood. Modest Livelihood is a collaborative film that Brian Jenkins did with fellow artist Joanne Linklater in 2012. The film followed the two artists as they embark on a series of moose hunting trips in Peace Country of Danza territories in northern British Columbia. The duo is also joined by Jenkins' uncle, Elder Jack, a Scottie, who shared with them knowledge of the land as the group traveled through the region's natural landscape alongside areas that have been heavily altered by industrialization. The silent film amplifies the visible absence of the animal and the complexity of Indigenous peoples' relationship with Canada as well as resist the disappearance of traditional knowledge and the constant redefinition of indigenous land by state-supported industries. Shantae Gibson. Artist Shantae Gibson altered history book as part of an ongoing project that explored the limitation of written words and the variety of recorded histories. Gibson physically alters the history book by gutting, redacting, and biting the pages using black threads, as the thread taking over the books and forming braids. Gibson's intervention suggests alternative ways to reading and writing history, ways that would highlight voices that are often lost in between the lines, not recorded or unheard in history textbooks written by dominating cultures. Florence Yi, whitewash, a labor of labor, please reply for. Artist Florence Yi uses textile and text to explore the history and experience of Chinese Canadian immigrants since the 19th century onward. In their 2018 artworks, Whitewashed and A Labor of Labor, we can see how the boundary between sentiment and comfort for many immigrants is being challenged by the cynicism of multiculturalism and characterizes Chinese Canadian stereotypes and exerts socio-economic pressure on them to uphold the model minority complex. And in that 2020 artwork, please reply for, Yi uses research and hand embroidery to further investigate the ambiguity, the in-betweenness that immigrants experience under a neoliberal system of globalism such as ours. Shelly Yang is complicated. Shelly Yang's sparkling text vinyl comprises two words, diaspora and haha. These words speak to both the perception and the experience of many immigrants, especially racialized folks in Western nations, including Canada. Similar to a self-referential joke, the text creates a satirical but critical comparison between the xenophobic and nationalist notion associated with racialized immigrants in developed nations and how immigrants themselves cope with the experience. Jeannie Ma, Train. Regina-based artist Jeannie Ma's multimedia installations speak to the intertwined history of Chinese immigrants in the Trans-Canada Railway. Ma uses images from historical archives and personal collection to highlight not only the history but also the contribution of Chinese families, including her own, in the development of Saskatchewan cities like Yorkton, Regina, and Console. Ma's ceramic cups and film photocopies, as fragile as the moments in the photo transfer on the surfaces it depicts. They are traces and memories of home that shift, fade away, and are lost, which is subsequent generation, sometimes within a lifetime.